The winning film will succeed not on the way it was shot or edited, but because of the passion that goes into it. Passion creates good production values, which in turn leads to prizes, of which there are 3. In the short clip you're about to see, we'll offer an insight into how to make your own film. So, good luck with the project.
In the first of the 2 sections you have already seen, we examined how to get the film's message across easier by utilising good research, planning and organisation. Section 2 was the film shoot itself and, although mostly scripted, was supplemented by unscheduled and unplanned events unfolding in front of the camera. Both were valid and therefore had an intrinsic value to the film. Now, all that footage will be pulled together as the boys begin the edit. Have you edited before? You have, haven't you?
Not really.
Not really, okay, right. The edit is incredibly creative, but the initial stages are very, very tedious. You have to log all the material into the system, you have to know every shot, take, interview, GV, wide shot, close-up. You need to know exactly where all the material is, so you can put your hand on it immediately. You need to know where to go to find the relevant shots. If you've got a director sitting with you and he says, I want to look at that waterfall shot, you need to be able to go to it straight away and just go click, waterfall, bang. Because you can't waste time, because directors get a bit cross. One person who knows most of the do's and don'ts in the world of editing is Steve Fairholme. With 40 years' experience under his belt, there is little he hasn't cut.
The principles of film editing are exactly the same as digital. Film editing was scissors, guillotine, sellotape, joining bits of film together, and so it's a very mechanical job. So when digital editing came in, which is what you've got here, the same process can be done much, much quicker. With this you can make several versions of the same thing and show your director when they come in without affecting the original source material. So this is the perfect medium really, especially with modern cameras being card cameras. You can just import the files and you're away. Actually learning to edit is very easy and you can learn that fairly quickly. If a sequence or an episode is well directed by a director who knows what they're doing, you can put it together ever so quickly. Everything is fairly logical, you can see all the shots are well planned. The director will come in after a week or 2 of filming, see his or her episode, and you will sort it out within a day or 2, finished. Other people will direct things that aren't quite so well planned, quite so well shot, quite so well thought out, even down to the angles being wrong. And it's up to you as the editor to sort out and try to make that work the best way you possibly can. And sometimes that can be quite difficult.
I think, I'm very biased, but I think it's the most challenging and interesting and creative part of filmmaking, because you're kind of in control, you know? You're playing with the material. You're using music, you're using sound effects, you're using dialogue, you're using images to create whatever impression you're trying to create. It's absolute control. If you're a control freak, it's the perfect job for you, because even if you're working with a brilliant director and you've had a brilliant cameraman shooting the stuff for you, the director has to use you. And when you start to build a sequence and you end up with a finished product, it is, for me, as an ex-film editor, it was one of the best parts of my working life, being a film editor. It was fantastic, just having total control of everything.
That would allow you to shoot 100 brace of that particular moor.
Do you remember this interview from earlier in our film? Well, Rab, the gamekeeper, is a very good interviewee, and what he has to talk about is extremely interesting. But, so far, all he's done is talk face to face to our interviewer. Now, wouldn't it be better if we were able to put images of what he's talking about over his interview? Now, in this case, he's talking about gun dogs being used on a moor by a gamekeeper to help him during the annual grouse count.
You would use English setter, Irish setter, pointing dogs basically. And if you do a spring count, you would go into this particular drive here is called Durrisdeer Rig. You would fetch the dogs at the top with the wind in their face, hunting the whole area.
This is what we call quartering, when the dog's working backwards and forwards across the wind, and they're scenting for grouse. And then when the dog smells a bird, they'll do what we call pointing.
So wasn't that a bit more interesting? Using library footage of the grouse count
And an additional interview with the dog trainer and handler Jean E. Brown,
complete with a piece of music, it all adds to the overall drama and makes for a much more pleasing piece of filmmaking. I think you would agree.
Exactly what you want.
So, what now?
if you think you've got something to say that might influence and maybe change the lives of people, then it's a good career to go into. If you want to be a filmmaker and you're absolutely convinced that's what you want to do in life, then be one. Stick to your guns. In spite of what anybody says, just go for it, because it's a most phenomenally rewarding profession to be in. And I'm sure that if you, for example, chose to go down that route, you would thoroughly enjoy it. It's not a job. I've never had a job in my life. It's not a proper job. It's been a ball. And you should never take it too seriously, because nobody's going to die at the end of it. I remember a story years ago. We worked on a film for 2 years, and just before it was due to be transmitted, the final print went horribly wrong, and we missed transmission. And the director, who'd worked on the film for 3 years, came up to us, and the editor I was working with was just beyond himself. And this lovely director said, "Listen, David, nobody's died. You know, it's not heart surgery or anything like that. It's just a film. So don't try and take yourselves too seriously. Really don't. And if you don't, you'll actually probably make a much better job of it."
And so that's it. How to and how not to make a film. But what of the boys and their project? How have they got on? Well, should we just say that it's work in progress?